to push the reset button as you begin to chart your course for a new work week.
Today, award-winning author Stacy Hawkins Adams joins us to talk about how you should be kinder to yourself. This is part of our Motivational Monday series. Good morning, Stacy.
Good morning.
I love this topic because you know what? Oftentimes there's a focus on being kind to everybody else, and then we're the ones that take the brunt of our own criticisms and unhappiness. How can we get started?
You know, I was thinking about how we should capture this, and I wanted to give practical tips because you're right. We're often saying, be kind to others, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But how are we able to do that if we're not being kind to ourselves? So I thought that we should think about this week speaking life over ourselves, being our authentic selves, and accepting our imperfections.
Okay, so speaking life, that's a great way to get started. We hear that phrase often, and so when we're in the midst of it, especially trying to, I know for me this morning, just getting out of the house on a Monday morning and believing you can do it is one of the things that we have to remind ourselves in the moment. What are your recommendations for speaking life in the moment?
You know, I was watching the French Open a little bit over the weekend, and I watched some interviews actually this morning from Coco Gauff, and she talked about playing the French Open in France when the whole crowd was cheering for her French opponent. And she said every time they said her name, they chanted her opponent's name, she said her name to herself.
Okay.
So they were saying, you can do it to the opponent. She was saying, you can do it, Coco. So I think that's the way to do it. We kind of start to say, oh no, I'm running late, or why didn't I do this, or why did I forget that? Instead say, you know what, I'll get through this moment, it's okay. And really just kind of keeps you it levels your mood out for the rest of the day.
Cheering yourself on.
Yeah, I really think that's all about it, because if we take it as defeat, if we maybe have a little hiccup to the day, that leveling the day off does not happen at all.
Exactly, exactly. And that leads us to being authentic. So when we think about being our authentic selves, when we kind of get into those modes of, oh no, I didn't get it right, then that can kind of like level into, oh my gosh, look at this other person who did get it right. There's the comparison thief, there's other things around us where we're like, why didn't I do it that way, or couldn't I do this better? But what if we are authentically accepting who we are as we are, our quirks and all, and appreciating that we add enough to the world as ourselves?
It reminds me of imposter syndrome, which is something that sets in very easily, but it's a great reminder to know that we all have different gifts and strengths and different joys that we bring to the world. And so yeah, we might have some of our overdone strengths, if you will, but there are going to be some things that bring life to others as we are continuing our day. Right.
And being authentic in that is actually owning it and saying, you know what, you do that really well, here's what I do really well. Or you know what, I didn't quite get that right today, but I'm going to own that. Even in the workspace, you know, sometimes we want to like put on that imposter mask or act like we're perfect, but if we didn't get something quite right, maybe we go to our manager or to our colleague and say, you know, I could have done this a little bit better, I'll get it better next time, but I want you to know that here's what happened in that moment. And that authenticity, that transparency actually builds connection, and actually it builds trust and integrity.
And something that occurred to me listening to this conversation as you were talking to Andreas and just being in the moment is that it's when we're being kind to ourselves, we're not being selfish. And I think sometimes we have to tell ourselves that if we're not always looking out into the world, that maybe we're being self-centered. But when we are kind to ourselves and we can kind of feel that glow and that happiness, that then has the ripple effect and helps our families and our friends and our colleagues and everyone who we interact with that day.
Exactly. My daughter was here over the weekend, my young adult daughter, and she's living a busy 20-something life in Charlotte. And she was telling me, Mom, my calendar is mapped out through February. I'm like, that is impossible. And so we were talking about how can she find the courage to say no to good things so she can build in some rest and some downtime and some mindfulness. And then I had an opportunity over the weekend to do something out of the state, out of the city anyway, and so it would have really like thrown my schedule off. And so she had the opportunity to watch me practice what I preach. So she saw me authentically being authentic, accepting the imperfection of not being able to be in two places at one time, but also just owning, you know what, sometimes we can overschedule ourselves and we have to be kind to ourselves so we can show that grace and be who we need to be for others.
And showing improvement little by little. You know, today I did it 1% better than I might have done it yesterday. So it may not be solved, I may not feel like I have it all figured out, but I know that I am making improvements in the right spaces, and that's a way that you can also be kind to yourself.
Absolutely, and buy yourself the flowers and take the nap and ride the motorcycle, as JB, your other guest, talked about earlier. So I think all the good things you can do to make yourself smile.
Emphasis on take the nap.
I heard the nap, I wholly support that one.
Well, thank you for coming in today. It's always a pleasure. Stacy offers weekly Motivational Monday emails, and if you're interested in subscribing, you can visit stacyhawkinsadams.com.